I'm going to start our recording so that it gets recorded.
See, a panelist just hopped on. Hi. I have a question for you.
Do you want to leave your name as C. Watkins, or would you rather it appear as Christina Watkins?
Oh, I didn't even know I could change that.
If you,
let's see.
Have you found the place you can change it? Look at you. Like, yep, I'm on it.
Very cool.
There you are. I would say the same to any of our other panelists. If you all want to change your name so it reads however you would like it to read, whatever that is. But that's probably how people will know you, recognize you, etc. So. I was just telling Christina that I am not the person to ask about pronunciations of people's names because I'm a Northerner and from above the Mason-Dixon line, and y'all in the South, like with your French influences and
everything is different.
I pronounce everything like a true Northerner. So that's me.
I think Jennifer Coco is pretty self-explanatory. Let's see.
Tony's joining us twice. She didn't like her audio before, maybe.
Oh, no, that's Claire was having trouble with the panelist link, so she's on.
Gotcha.
Mine.
So it does lock me in as you then, Tony.
But you can change your name, that's fine.
Change your name, exactly.
And we don't need to be seen during the presentation anyway.
There we go.
Hi, Claire.
Good afternoon. Hi, Christina. Hi, Amanda.
How are you?
Asimo, Jennifer. Hi. Good. How are you guys?
Good. Good. All is well.
Mr. Harris, will you do me a favor, please, and just pronounce your name for me?
Kasimu.
Kasimu.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thank you.
All right. So hopefully our other folks join us here shortly. I would, by about 5 minutes of the hour, I would like to go ahead and we're in practice session right now. So folks can't see us or hear us. Hello.
Hey, this is my husband, Amanda. I'm sorry. You probably didn't know that.
I did not.
Yes. I'm having technical difficulties, but for the sake of time, I just wanted to let you know. It looks like Jen is on, Tony, Claire. Okay. So for the sake of time, Christina, do you have the Run a Show up in front of you?
I do.
Okay. So just really quickly, we'll just kind of go over what that looks like.
Okay.
And it's kind of self-explanatory. But Amanda, I want you to hone in on your cue for wherever you have to like maybe play a little bit of music for the poll. So we decided to keep the polls at 2 questions so that we could kind of keep it moving, but we know there's going to be a little pause. So just kind of have some jazz playing or something. Right. Okay, so Christina, we have 2 videos, right, Amanda, that's going to play in the beginning?
Correct. They're linked together. So we'll start right out with those 2 videos, and they are actually a total of 4 minutes and 29 seconds.
Okay.
So, basically once we're ready to go, which will be, I'll wait about 30 to 45 seconds, maybe even a minute after the hour to start those, just so that people can get in and, get settled. We'll go straight to those, and then we'll come back to you, Christina. When I stop sharing my screen, you will be live. So you'll see me, your camera and microphone will be off. I'll see me give you 2 requests to start your camera and start your microphone. They'll be on your screen. Accept both of those, and then as soon as you accept them, you are live, you can start.
Okay.
You're going to do your kind of intro and your introduction of the panelists, etc. And then we will not bring in the speakers until you are done with your introductions.
Okay.
Right. And Amanda, I'm not trying to, but Nina needs you to resend her the panelist link. Nina Compton.
Right.
And then, so once you're done in talking about how engaging the webinar will be and all those good things, then we'll go straight into the questions, and it'll be a free for all. So we have about maybe 5 to 7 minutes. And this is for the panelists to understand as well, to answer each question. So we can bounce off of each other, and, you know, you can kind of just keep track of time that way. But after the first couple of questions, the first poll, and then there's a second set of questions, and then there's a second poll, and then there's a third set of questions, which is the final set of questions. And then
Okay.
after that, we will go ahead, and I think this was the revision that I was telling you about. You'll go ahead and discuss the results of the survey. And from there, that's when Dr. Dunham will, that's when you will cue the Q&A.
Okay.
People will be able to, you know, send in questions via the chat feature, comments, etc. And then hopefully we have a good bit of participation there. And if not, and you kind of feel it through, you can just give it back to Dr. Dunham for her closing remarks.
Okay. And I'll be able to see the questions in the chat?
Amanda?
Yeah.
Or will somebody else be asking the questions that we see in the chat? I'll see those myself, right?
You should be able to see them in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah. And if not, we have Claire and Tony here as support, and they'll be able to assist.
Okay. And then for introductions, because our panelists are amazing, and I see there's 5 minutes allotted here. How deep do you need me to go into bios? Because you all are fantastic.
Yeah.
For real, for real.
I know, and I think that there are such influencers, a lot of people logging on know them. I would just see their name, their title, and then just collectively say what an amazing panel we have. We ask that you guys follow them on social media, etc., and all that good stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Just so I make sure I'm activating the correct people at the correct time, our panelists are Jennifer, Nina, Rashad, Min, and who's I feel like I have 1 or 2 more.
The panelists are Nina, Danielle, Rashida, Kasimu, Min, and Jennifer.
Kasimu, okay. So Jennifer, Rashida, who are we missing who isn't here yet then?
It may be Nina. I know she needs you to resend that.
Oh, she's here. Nina.
Okay, she's here? Okay, good. Awesome. Hey, Nina. Let me see.
So I have Jennifer, Nina, Rashida, Min, Kasimu.
Hey, everybody. I see everybody now.
And who else am I missing?
Danielle, right? I don't see her.
No, okay. Danielle, what's her last name?
Right.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So when she comes, I'll get that going. Okay, it's 6:59, so I'm going to turn off everybody's camera.
Okay.
Put up our slide. As I said, folks, when it is your turn, when you're ready to speak, I will ask to start your camera and ask to start your microphone. It's 2 requests you have to say yes to. I can't turn that on from my side. So if somebody tells you can't be heard or whatever, that's check for your microphone being muted.
But really quickly, I just, Rashida, hi. Will you do me a favor, please? Just want to make sure I'm pronouncing your last name correctly.
Just Govan, nothing fancy.
Okay. Thank you. You look fabulous. I love that hair.
All right. Do you have all the other pronunciations?
Yes, yes, I do. Thank you.
Amanda, please resend the login to Dr. Dunham and to Danielle Wright.
Okay, hold on.
Sorry about that. Yes.
That's all right. Let's do that before we make this thing live. All right.
Now, if we wanted to speak, what do we have to do with the requests and such?
I don't know that I have Dr. Dunham's email address.
send it to you, Amanda.
Okay.
It's Rochelle,
R-
ROCHELLE
Mhm.
Dunham, DUNHAM
Uh-huh.
at MHSDLA.org.
Thank you.
No problem.
MHSDLA.org.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Let me just make sure that that happened. Yep. Okay. So they're all good or should be good. Let's hope they're good. I'm going to get back up my slide here. I'm going to get back up my thing. I'm going to make sure we're all good. Okay. So it will probably, well, it's 7:01 right now. So I'm going to start this. I'm going to mute everybody, turn all your, if everybody could turn off their cameras, please. And I'll start this and we're coming back with a video and then to Christina. Christina, I'm going to give it another minute for people to get in before we start. So it'll be a second.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us today. I am Melissa Silva, the Executive Director for the Mental Health Association for Greater Baton Rouge, the Louisiana affiliate for Mental Health of America. MHA has served the Baton Rouge community and the state for over 66 years. We have partnered with the Office of Behavioral Health to offer Behavioral Health 911. These events offer education on topics affecting all of us in our state. As an advocacy organization for those with behavioral health needs, today we bring you experts in the field speaking on topics specific and critical to your region. While we cannot be face-to-face to have these conversations, we feel the need for them continues. There will be a time for question and answers from our panel at the end of the presentation. Please enter your questions in the Q&A section, as it is separate from the chat box. We will address as many questions as time allows. Today, through a partnership with Metropolitan Human Services District, we are proud to present Get Your Mind Right, a behavioral health community conversation. With the recent pandemic and disaster, this conversation is very timely, as we are all working to promote better self-care of oneself and of that of others. We would like to thank today's speakers for giving of their time and expertise. Please enjoy the presentation.
Hello, my name is Charlene Gradney, and I'm a program manager with the Louisiana Department of Health, Office of Behavioral Health. On behalf of the Office of Behavioral Health, I would like to thank and welcome each of you for joining us for today's event. We are excited to partner with MHA for community events like these. The Office of Behavioral Health has a long history of partnering with MHA as we share the same passion to educate individuals, families, and communities on behavioral health issues and how to access resources and programs in your local communities. The Louisiana Department of Health is committed to the advancement and promotion of positive health, to include positive behavioral health practices. LDH navigates with the purpose of assisting the citizens of Louisiana every day, and especially as we navigate this unprecedented health event. Dealing with disasters can cause stress and strong emotions, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic. It is natural to feel anxiety, grief, and worry. Coping with these feelings and getting help when you need it will help you, your family, and your community. The Office of Behavioral Health and its partners have been very committed to the COVID-19 response efforts, as the global health impact of COVID-19 affects not only physical health, but social, emotional, and behavioral health. While the physical health impacts of COVID-19 are more widely known, the emotional and mental toll of this pandemic is also far-reaching. Mental health is as important to our overall health as physical health. If these stressors are not addressed and handled properly, the impact may lead to unhealthy choices, potentially including substance use and increases in negative coping and emotionally reactive behaviors. As the people of Louisiana, we continue to work together to live with the new reality of COVID-19. Unfortunately, we are no strangers to crises and disasters, as Louisiana now faces recovery from the devastation caused by Hurricane Laura. It is the commitment of the Office of Behavioral Health to partner with community programs such as MHA to provide support and resources, as well as hope and encouragement. While we may be practicing physical distancing at this time, we have never been more connected to the people we are called to serve. The Office of Behavioral Health thanks MHA for hosting this event and their commitment to serving the people of Louisiana. We would also like to thank the local partners for joining as presenters and co-hosting this event. We thank you for joining us today for this very important event.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Christina Watkins, and I'm an anchor at WDSU News, and it is my honor and my pleasure to serve as your moderator tonight for Get Your Mind Right. This is such an important discussion, a panel discussion that we are going to have tonight. And myself, as an advocate for mental health awareness, I am just so grateful to be part of this, to lead this discussion, and to join all of you from your homes, of course, the comfort of your homes, so that we can talk about the things that we need to do to stay sane, to stay healthy mentally, and to be able to get through these crazy days and these crazy times that we are dealing with. Part of the Metropolitan Human Services District, they do so much work throughout the community, and I just want to thank you all for inviting me here tonight as the moderator. This organization, Metropolitan Human Services District, they serve people all across the community with mental health disorders, addictive disorders, as well as intellectual and developmental disabilities all across Louisiana. Not to mention, I should point out, throughout this pandemic, they have been working tirelessly with a hotline for anybody to call whenever they have questions, concerns, they just need to talk it out with somebody. That hotline has been available day after day, just serving the people throughout these difficult days. So just some incredible work that all of the organizations part of this tonight do. And I encourage you all at any given moment in your lives, if you need somebody to talk to, somebody is there. You are not alone. I promise you that. So tonight, we have got an incredible group of panelists from all different sorts of backgrounds as well as professions, and they are going to share what it is like for them throughout these days, how they handle mental health on the job, and any advice and recommendation for any of you who were watching. So this is going to be an interactive night. We're also going to go through some different questions and some polls, and we encourage you to answer these questions that we have for you, because we're going to read the results of the poll at the end. And feel free in the chat at any given moment, if you have any questions at all, this is the time to ask them. So we look forward to this tonight, and we cannot wait to see what you all have for us. So let's get to our panelists tonight. Let's start with Dr. Rashida Govan. She is the Executive Director from New Orleans Youth Alliance. Thank you so much for being here tonight. We greatly appreciate your time. We also have Dr. Danielle Wright, the Division Director for Navigate NOLA, joining us tonight as one of our panelists. Attorney Jennifer Coco is the Founding Director of Policy and Advocacy for New Pathways New Orleans. Thank you so much for your time. Kasimu Harris is a New Orleans-based artist who posits in a number of different strategic and conceptual devices, doing so much work here in the city. Kasimu, thank you so much for your time tonight. Devnita Compton here is an award-winning chef, and we cannot wait to hear about how you are dealing right now. We know the restaurant industry has been hit so hard throughout this pandemic. Looking forward to your conversation. And we also have Min Wen here joining us tonight, who is an entrepreneur and does so much work throughout the community. And we just cannot thank each and every one of you for joining us and for your willingness to be open with this conversation that we are going to have tonight. So this is our panel, and we appreciate all of your time. So let's begin, shall we? We're going to start with just a couple of questions, and we can just kind of go through each and every one of you. Feel free to speak up at any given time. One of the first questions that we have tonight is, what does mental illness look like in your respective industries? Dr. Govan, I want to start with you, please.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much for the question and for having all of us. Mental illness looks, I think, in my industry the same way it does in other industries. How it manifests and surfaces in my industry in particular, because my industry is dominated by a lot of women. So if you don't know what I do, I work in education and youth development, which is heavily populated by women who are serving young people. No surprises there. But one of the ways that it manifests a lot is through anxiety. And so we see lots of people in our industry who suffer with anxiety, which is not uncommon for women. I think women suffer with anxiety issues and depression more frequently than males do. And so that's some of what we see. But I mean, you see a wide range of mental illness that shows up because we work with young people who come with a range of challenges, as well as the adults who serve them. We deal with a lot of young people who have experienced trauma. And so one of the things in our industry that is a risk in our industry is experience of vicarious trauma. Vicarious trauma really speaks to the experience of being traumatized by supporting people who have experienced trauma. So we start to deal with some of the residual effects of what other people have experienced. And so there are things that we have to do to take care of ourselves and in our industry so that we can be well. So when we're not well, we actually can do a lot of harm to children. And so my work and my organization, the New Orleans Youth Alliance, is to really try to set up or our organizations to build the structures needed so that the staff can be well and to train them to be able to respond appropriately to children who have experienced trauma.
Dr. Wright, what about you? What does mental illness look like in your industry?
Sorry. So I'll try not to say the same thing that Rashida said. Rashida and I work so closely together. We do trainings together, and we both work with young people, and we both do a lot of training and professional development with adults that work with young people. So I'll say, as a mental health professional and a therapist and social worker, primarily what I see is compassion fatigue. And so this sort of emotional erosion that sets in with individuals who work closely with children who have been exposed to trauma and adverse childhood experiences. And I would say primarily for mental health professionals who are caretakers and oftentimes feel very much like frontline workers, there is this sort of natural inclination to care for others when we are in emotional distress. So we tend to those who are most vulnerable and sacrifice a lot of the inward work that needs to take place in terms of self-care practices, practicing self-awareness and recognizing the traumatic experiences that we are currently experiencing. And so there's a lot of self-sacrifice and not taking care of ourselves. And so that manifests itself in a lot of different ways: anxiety, panic attacks, depression. There are a host of symptoms. So that's some of the things that I see in my profession. And then something else I'll say is I'm seeing a lot of panic attacks. And that has to do with a lot of suppressed emotions, really strong emotions, individuals suppressing them and not recognizing that they manifest somatically. And sometimes what that looks like can be interruption in sleep, and sleep deprivation, anxiety, depression, all of these kinds of things. So try to say something a little different from Rashida, but again, we work so closely together and with the same population. So compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma are very similar. Compassion fatigue was carved out primarily for first line workers, but again, mental health professionals and individuals working on the front line right now can all, that term resonates.
Certainly. So I'd actually like to kind of go down our entire list of panelists, because I think looking at what mental illness looks like in your industry is so important for the basis of what we're going to touch on tonight. So, Kisimo, let's go to you. If you can describe what it looks like in your industry, please.
Hey, thanks for having me, you all. It's an honor to be here with so many of you all who I know, and it's just great to see people. And sorry we couldn't kibitz and hang out in public. Well, I think a lot of it is stress. You know, I work as a freelancer, and it's often like being overqualified and underemployed. So, it's like in my industry, you could do something really big for a huge company, and you may get those net 30 terms to where you don't get paid to 30 or 90 days. So the uncertainty of that, and especially if you're someone like me who has a family, so it's just not you, and just being able to provide while you're working, you're doing a lot, but the income it's not often commensurate with the output that you have. So a lot of colleagues that I speak to, that's something that they deal with. And in addition to the stress of always having obligations, just the pressures you put on yourself, just to make sure the pressure that you're doing all these things, but you're not being rewarded as you deserve. So I know for me personally, at the beginning of the pandemic, it was like that. And then when everything shut down, I just had to fight really hard not to sink into some type of depression, because it's like traveling. I was doing work in Black bars, and I was traveling to New York and various places for speaking engagements. And then when all that stopped, it's just like, I'm truly unessential in the sense that I don't have to work right now. And how do you create work, and how do you create income? So for a lot of colleagues that I know, that's something that we deal with all the time. And you just try to combat it with being confident in yourself and having a support group and being vulnerable and talking to people about it. So that's what it often looks like.
And thank you so much, Kisimo. Nina, I think for you also as a chef right now, speak about what mental illness in your industry looks like throughout this pandemic.
Yeah, it's a different time. Sorry, good evening, everybody. I'm very honored to be with you guys and talking about this subject, because it really is something that we need to address, because so many people are going through it on different levels. And there's nobody that's in this year saying, oh, I'm great. There's nobody that's having the up year. I think, being a restaurant owner right now is extremely stressful. That being said, I'm responsible for a lot of people as well. And that has been a huge stress for me, because, every time you turn the news on, it's don't go to restaurants or stay at home or cook at home. And that hinders, my business, because people don't want to come out to restaurants. They feel unsafe right now. They want to stay at home, or they're working from home. So, that's the pressure that I'm dealing with, trying to give my staff a job, give them a livelihood, because I'm looking at every single person on my team and they have kids. Some people are, this is a second job for them and they're going to school. So there's a lot of things that I feel responsible for as an owner because these people are my family. And when we did shut down in March, we were very busy. And then to go from busy to nothing, that was a very hard moment for me to call all my staff in and say, hey guys, we're going to close until we know what's going on. And that was a very hard time because I checked in with my staff, a couple of weeks after we closed, and you could hear the voices of, just broken people, people just going through hardships of the uncertainty of what's going to happen. And I think for me, it was a sense of helplessness because I didn't have the answer for them. And when you're, the boss or the owner, you always had the answer, like, oh yeah, next week is going to be busy, or, December is going to be busy, or the holidays. And this was the one moment where I didn't have any control over anything. And for me, I have to have this poker face every single day, like, it's going to be okay, guys, we're going to stay strong. And for me, it's a long game of, trying to be the strong one for my team. And I think the biggest thing that has really helped us is the sense of community that we have in the restaurants, of having an open door policy of, if somebody needs help, let myself or my husband know. And it's a lot of hardship, and you can see a lot of people going through a lot of things. When you talk about falling behind on bills, I'm here to help them out as much as possible, because that's what I really want to see, is my team pull through this, and see them on the other side, because it's a really long journey. And you have people that are homeschooling kids, that are working full-time jobs, that are stressed out because they don't know they've never had to teach their kids at home. So they're juggling, working at home plus homeschooling plus feeding their kids. It's a lot for people to deal with, and you kind of really don't have an escape. You can't just jump on the plane and go on a vacation like my background. This is like my mental vacation, but people don't have that. And I think that was the hardest thing for people when the city shut down, is we didn't have an escape. We felt trapped, and there was no way to release that stress. So I think that this is definitely, we're 9 months in, and how do we get through this for another couple of months? Because this is going to be, people say that 2021 is going to be the new year. Yes, it is, but we still have a lot of baggage to carry from 2020 to 2021. So I think that this discussion is going to help us get through that. So thank you for having me.
Yes, and we appreciate you for being here. Nina, you mentioned kids in regards to that. I'm going to ask Jennifer this next question. As an attorney who also, you do a lot, including working with vulnerable children, specifically within the public education system, they have been significantly impacted by this pandemic as well when it comes to their schooling and falling behind in grades and so forth. What does mental illness look like in your industry right now?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me. This panel is just full of absolute rock stars, so I'm really honored to be a part of it, and know that some of you are my friends, and just in awe of all of you. So I've spent, the past decade as both an attorney, but someone doing policy work. So I've been able to float at this level where I've been in the weeds of community, but I've also gone up to the top of more like grass tops and looking at different legislative and policy reforms. And that's the space I occupy a bit more now. But both like being an attorney, but being in the nonprofit space, it's a funny lane to occupy. Attorneys by nature, myself included, tend to be overwhelmingly very type A. So really doubling down on what Danielle and Rashida said, very prone to anxiety, depression. It's hard when things are outside of our control. But then that plus the fact of being in an industry where, I'm not in it for the money. I could be, but I've deliberately chosen not to be, and to make sure that I do work that I believe in, that helps children and helps parents. Everything that Danielle and Rashida said with compassion fatigue, vicarious trauma, that is very real. The thing I'll add to that, particularly I think for nonprofit attorneys or folks in the policy space, is for attorneys, like, I'm really good at a couple things. I'm not a counselor. I don't do mental health. So I think for us folks that can get a lot of exposure to people on their absolute worst moments and in their, having really truly been victims of horrific things, whether it be systemic racism or someone outright hurting them, making sure that we can both deal with the vicarious trauma of that, recognize when we might be having compassion fatigue, because that can mean we can really shut down and then not be able to be our best empathetic selves to people who are coming to us seeking help. And then the final piece of that is knowing your boundaries. Like, what can me and my colleagues do to help, and when are we not being helpful and we are not able to provide crisis intervention? And so knowing those moments, it's always been really important to me to know who are my colleagues in the mental health profession, or that I'm going to refer to, because I'm going to know my limits of what I can do. And I've really learned some hard lessons with that over the years with kids who have been in crisis. And it really has broken my heart, and recognizing, when it's time to step back, know my place, what I can do to help, how I cannot be helpful, and how, I recreate that village around a child or a family to make sure they get the resources that they need. And that is more important right now than ever, as everybody is stuck in their homes and, might really be struggling to figure out where to look for assistance.
Thank you so much. Min, let's chat with you for a couple of minutes. Talk about how your work culture responds to seeking or maybe even receiving mental health services.
Yeah, so I think when I was actually first asked to do this, we were already in a different time, and then now it's like something totally different again, right? I think when COVID hit, my second son, was roughly around 4 to 5 months old. So trying to work at home and also taking care of a 5-month-old baby and a 3-year-old. Wow, that was rough. That was I don't know how anybody does it, but it was really rough trying to do that. But also doing it time, for me as an entrepreneur, like, for us, if we don't work, we don't make money, right? So that's it. And when everybody else is not working, nobody makes money. And that was really hard for me and for my family and for my wife as well. She is an essential worker. She still had to work every day while I take care of the kids, right? So I guess for like folks in my industry, like, we just had to figure out how to reinvent ourselves. And I'm in the printing business, so a lot of my clients, they were trying to figure out how to reinvent themselves as well. And so it was a bittersweet moment for me, because it really challenged me to help other businesses figuring out how to do something better, right? For restaurants, right? How to it was a good time for the restaurants to recreate the menus, to rebrand, to take a step back, to figure out how to be more efficient, how to be more effective. So it was bittersweet for me. That's how I kind of see it, and it gave a lot of folks, I think, in my industry a time to reflect, right? Uh, how to reposition our business, and what can we do to support other businesses, right, or other clients that we have in this time, in the time of despair. And I think, I do feel that folks who are from New Orleans, who have been through Hurricane Katrina and through all of these crisis, that we are not we're trained but not at this level, so it continues to challenge us even more on how to deal with these type of you know these challenges, right? So I would say that. And then the fact that I think it it gave us kind of more time too. Like, the other thing that I want to say is that it does made us slow down. It gave us time to look at what we have. It gave us time to kind of look within, right, within our home, within our mind, within like our soul, right? What will keep us alive? And I think that was something that to me is really it was good. It was good in a way. Financially, obviously not good, but like I think for a person who have always been on the run, always going and always been helping the community, it really pushed us to reflect, in our own homes, right? What can we do to make our lives better? So I think that's one of the things that, I do talk to my clients, I talk to myself, I talk to my son, I talk to my family, that this is the time to do that. We really need to slow down and really cherish what we have.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for the first part of this, our industry reflections. Just talking about what mental illness looks like and how does the work culture respond. We're going to get to our first poll. I told you all at the beginning, this is going to be interactive. So now we need you to respond to these 2 questions that will pop up on your screen. You'll have about 60 seconds to do it. Everything is anonymous. Your name will not pop up. It is a-okay. This is just so that we can get a better idea of how your employer supports employees in receiving mental health support if needed. That's the first question of this poll, asking if your employer does that. And the second question of this poll you'll see here says, since the pandemic, have you yourself felt at risk of losing your job because of a mental illness? So if you can take a couple more seconds to just fill this poll out for us, this will really give all of our organizations who are here tonight a better idea of what is going on in the workplace, what is going on across our city, and how they can reach out and help even more than they already are doing so. I can say in my industry, being an anchor, this has been an extremely tiring time for journalists, having to cover so much throughout these past couple of months. And, it's been great to have others within the industry to vent to kind of go to talk to about certain things, having a significant other to vent to, having my parents to vent to. I know my mom's watching, hey mommy. And, just having the support behind you throughout these challenging days. So definitely something that I think we all can relate to on that. So final seconds to fill out this poll. If you haven't already done so, go ahead and submit that, and then we will move on to the next part. And let's go ahead and start the second part of tonight. Thank you all so much. We will share the answers of all of these polls at the end before we wrap up. Let's talk about some other questions that we have tonight. Danielle, I want to ask you this. What are your own personal coping strategies during this pandemic? You talk about some of the things that you see on the job and things that you deal with, but how do you deal?
So I try to practice self-care and like not necessarily the good feeling self-care all the time, like not like massages and like some of the like grooming strategies that people consider to be self-care, but I do spend a lot of time going inward, journaling and reflecting on my own experiences and how they impact the way that I interact with other people, how I see the world around me. I go to therapy once a week. I have a therapist. That's a big part of my self-care. And so I would say that, and making sure that I schedule time, social time, to be around friends. That's really important for me. And somatic awareness is a big thing. So I get up in the morning, I walk outside, make sure I get sunlight, I drink coffee outside, I pay attention to birds and flowers. Like I just have 5 minutes of like time to myself to reflect. That's been very important to me during this time. So yeah, I mean, those are some of the things that I do to kind of help me. And then I can be kind of nerdy. So I've been getting into like neuroscience lectures, but like every couple of months I switch over to something new, like a new skill set that I want to build or something I want to learn. And so I've been like every weekend, like listening to like neuroscience lectures. And I had another thing before that. So I just keep switching and trying to keep myself interested in things and excited about things. And definitely scheduling time to be with friends as safely as possible, even if it's just scheduling like phone calls with them, but I make sure I get time in to be social with family and friends.
And that really does matter. Something that I have to personally do more, scheduling time with friends. Kasimu, what about you? You talked about some of the struggles with your industry right now during this pandemic. How do you deal with that?
You don't stop. You just continue to move forward. You know, I set a goal for myself, and you see it through. Like, I'm unwavering in my pursuit of telling stories of my community. So if I don't get paid, which I didn't for years, I would still do it. Luckily, I guess the last 3/4 of this year has been great, but I know what it's like to be on the other side of that. And you know, you just have to have an unwavering pursuit. And I love what I do. So if I wasn't getting paid, I would still do it, and I would find something to supplement my income. And that's just been very important to me. I remember early in the pandemic when things just seemed bleak, my wife said, "I got you." And that was just reassuring. You know, she was like, you know, regardless of what happens, like, I got us. And that took like a ton of proverbial anxiety off of me. It's not proverbial because it was just real. You know, you looking at, she was pregnant at the time, so you looking at your third child on the way, and it's like, ain't no work. So what do you do? So I continue to tell stories. So that's what I tell people. That's the advice I've given myself. And you know, it's certain things like within the art, I'll tell people, you know, apply to open calls. And if you didn't have money, I've offered money to people to just apply, just to get your work seen, just to get in front of people. In the pandemic, I've still talked to curators and things like that. I have a show opening Saturday. So it's like, you just keep moving forward. And that's been just of the utmost importance for me.
That's awesome. I mentioned that significant other, major role. Wifey says she got you. I love it. There's been a recent study from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and it said that in June of earlier this year, 40% of adults all across America, they reported struggling with mental illness or substance abuse. And within that population, within that 40%, 11% seriously considered suicide. Nina, I want to ask you this because you are in an industry that we know has been hit so hard by this, in the restaurant industry. Do you know someone personally, or have you had challenges during this time?
I mean, I've had a couple of people on my team that, you know, prior to the pandemic, you know, had some, you know, some issues at home. And I think that the pandemic has, you know, opened that even wider. And, you know, that's the biggest thing for me is there's a lot of people that are struggling within and they don't know how to ask for help. And I think that, you know, one of the things you have to really do is really check in with people and say, hey, are you okay? Or just something like, hey, if you need anything, let me know. You know, or just check in like, hey, you seem a little off today. Are you okay? And it's really about getting your foot in the door with that person, because they may not be comfortable, you know, spilling the beans on what's going on. But just recognizing that for somebody, you know, I think is step one. I think going above and beyond and making them feel okay. You know, it is a very tough time in our industry because you see restaurants closing, bars are closing, and you know, every day you watch the news, it's, you know, what's going to happen. You see around the country, you know, in California, there's, you know, indoor or outdoor dining. So now we're looking at each other like, man, is Louisiana next? You know, so there's this constant like, what if it's going to happen? But you have to really create this safe space for everybody and say, listen, no matter what, we're going to make this. We're going to make it work. And you know, this communication, I think, is the biggest thing with everybody. And again, just lending yourself, because it is a very dark period right now where it's all the self-doubt, you know, where you see things around you closing up. And, you know, like Asima said, you know, my husband, you know, during this pandemic, we've become closer than anything, you know, and it's, you know, when other people were trying to get divorced, we were just like best friends, you know, because that's all I have, like let's get through this together and let's make this work, because we're not only husband wife, but we're also business partners. So really confiding in somebody that you trust, and also when you're down, having that person where you can say, today was a terrible day. And I think that's what everybody needs right now, is that one person they can go to and say, you know what, life is terrible right now. And just having somebody to say, you know what, it's going to be okay. And I think that's what we all need right now, is somebody to say it's going to be okay, because it is really, really dark times. And, when people talk about substance abuse, in our industry, it's prevalent prior to the pandemic, where you talk about people just going out to, after, to the bars after work and just being out until 4 a.m. So there's a lot of that's going on prior to the pandemic, and it's more and more now, because people they feel lost. So, as a leader in industry, I have to tell people, like, it's terrible right now, but when we get to the other side, it's going to be okay. And I think that's the biggest thing. We have to just stay positive. And it's very hard to do that right now, but you have to surround yourself with people that are positive. And that's what I try and do, is be around positive energy, because, I am the only one who can keep my lights lit, and that's what I have to do, because it becomes contagious.
That is a fact. You got to let your light shine. And I love that. Rashida, what about you? When you talk about substance abuse and suicide and these thoughts and, things that people are dealing with, do you know someone personally, or do you care to share some challenges you may have dealt with throughout these past 9 months?
Yeah, this has not been easy. I think at the beginning for me, I felt very isolated because I was alone, and I was just with another group of young people doing like some healing work. And I just told them, like, at the beginning of this, there was a moment, it was right after a press conference that Mayor Cantrell had. And she said, like, just started talking about the restrictions at the very beginning. And I was like, I knew it was coming, but it was something about hearing it in that moment and then sitting with it. And I remember sitting in the dark because it was time for bed. I didn't know what to do with myself because I was like, well, what do you do now? So I remember just sitting there, and all of a sudden I just burst into tears and I started sobbing. And I was sobbing because I was like, when am I going to see somebody I care about? Like, when's the next time I'm going to get a hug or have physical contact or see my family? And that period of just pure uncertainty, when we were all just getting information, for me was a terrible time. And I was not doing well. And then I had to decide, like, how am I going to get back to the people that, like, how am I going to get to somebody that I love, that I can connect with? So 2 things that I did was, one, I have a best friend who's here, who's also single, living alone. And we decided we would take whatever precautions necessary so that we could be a quarantine crew. So it was like the 2 of us will take care of each other. We're going to do holiday, we'll do whatever. We'll take precautions to make sure that we can see each other and spend time. But even that was not enough. I ended up going back to New Jersey where my family was, because I was like, I'm missing my nieces. Mama, I can't do this without them. So I went back and I stayed for 4 months, y'all, 4 months under my mama's roof. 4 months.
Shout out to mama.
Yeah, no, it was like, it was tough, but like the things that I learned is that my family is everything to me. Like, my family, my guys, everything. And so it was important to connect with them. And then I realized my family, my friends were super important to me. So I had to get back to them as well. So I had to come back. I was like, I miss my friends. I will figure out how to do this thing safely. If it's virtual, we on the phone. If I'm dropping off food or they're dropping off stuff, we're going to do that. Yeah. And I also have determined that I'm going to do every corny thing that will keep me happy. Like, holidays are way more important. So we did a like trick-or-treating in the house and made the different rooms neighborhoods for my nieces. If that was going to get them through the day, that's what we want to do. We did costume changes, in my house. I got 2 Christmas trees now because every room is going to have some Christmas because this is the things that I know that bring me joy. I watch Hallmark movies incessantly with their stupid endings. But for me, there's no bad news in them. So like, for me, it is just like whatever I have to do to create moments of joy is what I'm gonna do. Now, on a more serious note, I have a lot of strategies to cope because I do that work. I do healing work with young people and adults. I've been to therapy. I have a lot of strategies. I talk to Danielle a lot. You know, we talk to each other about boundaries and balance, but I work with young people who are struggling. I mean, struggling so much so that I went to my funders and asked for additional money so that we can afford to pay for them to go to therapy. And then I called Danielle and she's been providing therapy to my young people. So it's essential. I'm not even joking around. Like, this has been one of the most challenging years of my life with respect to work. But at the same time, the community that I serve and that I work with has been tighter than ever, showing a lot of grace, a lot of patience, a lot of support, and a lot of love. And I think those are things that we need. And my prayer is for people who don't have that, like, try to create that where you can and in the ways that you can.
Yes to all of that, especially the Hallmark movies. I can't count how many times I've watched Lifetime and Hallmark movies. I have them all DVR'd, got them all set. I have 2 Christmas trees. You see this behind me? Like, I am that person. So, you know, like you said, whatever you have to do to find joy. On that note, let's go ahead and get to our second poll. If we can go ahead and pull that up. Before we get to the poll, actually, let's go ahead and ask another question. Jennifer, I want to go back to you. Let's talk about some of your own personal coping strategies during the pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the ones that I had pre-pandemic are some of the same, with the exception of one big one. I became pregnant during the pandemic. I'm now 8 months pregnant. I'm having a baby in like 6 weeks. It's been a lot. I'm excited now, but like, it's been really hard. And in the midst of this, my whole household got COVID. And so, you know, still a little bit uncertain, like, what does that mean? I'm healthy right now. My baby's healthy right now, but I'm like in and out of doctors like crazy because everyone's just a little bit worried. And so it's really been a lot. So the biggest, probably most missed coping mechanism is as I joke, I really picked the wrong year to give up wine. So I'm really counting down the days for when I can have a big glass of wine. But other coping mechanisms, like, I'm a person who, like, I have a lot of anxiety, and that can really build. And I know if I don't let it out, like, I'm gonna go a little nuts. So I'm a big believer in a good cry. So I embrace that fully. My poor husband, particularly being pregnant, he could keep a journal the number of times I cry during a day, God knows what. But yeah, that I really just a lot of fresh air. I have a toddler, so she actually grounds me quite a bit to think about, like, what example am I setting for her? How do I make her feel normal? How do I make sure she perceives like and really feels she's in a happy home where people aren't freaking out and anxious. So that's been a really good level setter, just to say, like, okay, maybe when I might just not want to get off the couch today, I can't do that. Like, I got to be present with her. So that has helped me quite a bit. But yeah, it's been a lot. This has been a really hard year. But you know, also same thing, like having the people that I'm close to, you know, for me, I'm very grateful to have an amazing partner that we can talk about everything. And I can just tell him, like, I'm scared and I'm not doing okay today. And we can talk through it and figure it out. And then vice versa, he can do the same to me when he's in those moments. So yeah, just good crying. I've been doing a lot of baking, eating a lot. It's great. Been getting a lot of takeout from Nina's restaurant, Bywater American Bistro. I love that spaghetti pomodoro. That's good comfort food. Recommend everyone try that if you haven't. Pick it up curbside. So those have been my go-to coping mechanisms.
That is amazing. First of all, congratulations on the baby, and, you know, hoping you and your family are doing well. You talked about wine. There was something, you talked about football here. Des Bryant, the other day when he got out from the game because he had COVID, he tweeted he's going to drink some wine and cope. And that's basically how to get through what we dealt through in 2020. Let's get to this second poll here. Again, all of these polls and the questions for the polls, the results are anonymous. We just want to collect some data so that all of the organizations involved here can get a better idea of what is going on. So the first question you'll see on your screen is, have you or someone you know experienced suicidal thoughts during the pandemic? And again, I just need to just stress that this is anonymous. Your name, your email, nothing like that will pop up in the results. The second question here is, do you find that your amount of drinking and or use of substances, prescriptions, including marijuana, has increased and you are having trouble scaling back? Again, this is anonymous. Just trying to collect some data because we all, every single person, I think this is something that Nina said, I don't think anyone's having a great year per se. There have been great moments, maybe so to speak, when you find the joy in things, when you find the light in some of the darkness that we're all going through. But it's been difficult for every single person. We have all struggled in one way, shape, or form, and that's okay. That's why we're having this discussion. That's why our amazing team of panelists, our professionals are here to show that you're not alone and that we all are dealing with something to some capacity. So if you can answer these polls as truthfully as possible, do not be ashamed, it's okay, just to get some data. And let's go ahead and move on to the next part. Couple more questions for our panelists. So let's start with Min. How do you safeguard your mental health in your industry? I know you serve on a lot of boards, you're an entrepreneur. One of the boards that you serve on is Second Harvest Food Bank. They have been working around the clock between the pandemic, hurricane season. I mean, it seems like it never ends. Talk about how do you safeguard your own mental health and all of the things that you do throughout your profession?
Yeah, I think, can y'all hear me? Is that an echo? Okay. To safeguard, so I want to say that, for me, I do, I guess, yeah, they're home with me for majority of the time until school started back up again. They really kept me grounded and to make sure that I, that I really slowed down. I mean, and the one thing that I want to mention is a few other things that, obviously having a support group is really important. Talking about our feelings, obviously is really important to people who we trust. One of the things that I did immediately for myself and for my family is, I got a portal, a Facebook portal. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's basically like, a FaceTime like iPad that I purchased for my son and my family because, right after March, right, my kid, Finley, he was like, we're not gonna see small people again, right? And I'm like, oh man, this is crazy, right? So I wanted to make sure that he was still felt connected. For me, like my kids, my family's everything, right? To make sure that they were happy and they were always feeling connected to other people, I had to figure out how to create access. So there is a Facebook portal on the floor where when Finley can call anybody he wants, and that way he could call his friends, right? So that's one of the things. The other thing is that just to make sure that again, like reflection is really important. Talking about it is really important. I reach out to a few of my friends who like that I just called everybody, right, to make sure that they knew that I was there for them and that that I cared. I know I wasn't asked this question, but I did have a friend, a high school friend that did commit suicide about a month ago, and for us it was pretty, a lot of us, he was one of our leaders at our high school. He was a football captain of our varsity team, and he was one of the strong guys, right? We saw him as one of the strong guys. I went to Holy Cross, and we got the Tiger Award, meaning that we were peer ministers, we were Eucharist ministers to our younger classmates. And for myself and the guys who we grew up with together, we had to have the conversation, like what happened, what happened to Jonathan. What he had a beautiful family, had a beautiful daughter, beautiful wife, they were happy, and what happened, right? And we want to make sure that we talk to all the guys, say, look, we are here for each other. I know we graduated from high school a long time ago, but we're still brothers, right? And it's important for us to reach out to each other during this time. And I think that's one of the key things is, like, I think folks are feeling disconnected, right? Some folks are feeling hopeless, right? Some folks are feeling as if they're alone in this. And I think it's so important for us to reconnect with folks, to make sure that they are like somebody cares, right? And there is a lot of challenges. We talk about the fact that there is a lot of challenges, and the fact that during this pandemic, let's not forget that there was a lot of racism that was happening during the Black Lives Matter movement, in the protests. All of that was going on at the exact same time. So anxiety, anger, sadness, all of that was kind of like combined, right? Not to mention, we already had a lot of trauma before this whole pandemic, right? So it was like compounded of trauma that all of us were facing. And then now we have to deal with trying to figure out how to stay alive, right? How to financially pay the bills, how to put food on the table, right? How to take care of our kids, not only to take care of our grandparents, our parents. And I think there's like so many things that we had to figure out. And then we just had to remind each other that we have to figure this out together, right? Like, we don't have to do that alone. And I think that was really, it was really important that we did that. And with our portal, we literally, I celebrated my birthday virtually, right? I called everybody, like, drunk. We were like drinking shots, like, hey, Christina,
Yeah.
drink a shot with me. Oh, okay, cool. We drink shots. Like, I mean, it was literally, we had to do all this celebrating virtually, right? But imagine if somebody was sad and they didn't get to have a chance to do that, like, or they weren't thinking like that, like, you do feel alone, right? And we got, I think it was just so important where that we connected virtually. But see, I do want to mention that like we are privileged, right? We have the internet, we have a smartphone, we have all of these things, but other people may not have that. So how do we, like, so that's where I get worried, right? Not everybody have access to the internet. No, not everybody have access to all the virtual things that I have. So that's something that I know that we must figure out how to reach other people, right?
Yeah.
So so that's one of the things that I do want to mention. So
Danielle, I want to ask you, thank you, Min, so much. We appreciate you, and our condolences to you, to your longtime friend. Danielle, how common would you say is it amongst your colleagues to resort to drug and alcohol use during this time?
Among my colleagues, I would say I wouldn't necessarily say that it's more common than it is across any other industry. I think that what happens a lot of times among my colleagues is sort of intellectualizing and understanding the experiences that we're having in terms of emotional distress, because it's the area that we work in. And so not leaning into the severity of it, and that we're also victims of those experiences, and we need to also have a therapist during in the midst of a racial pandemic and a public health pandemic, right? And then also managing the emotional distress of other people. So I would say that's primarily what I'm seeing a lot of that. And leaning into outlets to manage that sort of exacerbated emotional distress, like alcohol and drug use. I don't necessarily see it. I don't necessarily see like the mental health profession or my colleagues necessarily doing more of that than I see across other industries. I wouldn't say it's not. I'm seeing it across all industries. In private practice, working with people who work in so many different industries, it's common just in general, not necessarily specific to mental health. What I'll say about my particular industry, or specifically Navigate NOLA, is that because I'm leading the division and I'm very concerned with emotional wellness, it's sort of carved into the work culture. And so there's a lot of checking in and making sure that staff members are emotionally well. So we do check-ins twice a week, and I carve out time, individual time with each employee. This is since coronavirus and the racial pandemic, to check in and see how they're feeling, encouraging time off, building in a lot of time off, more time off than we've ever had before, because I recognize how vulnerable we are because of the work that we do and because of the current set of circumstances. And also just as a leader, creating reasonable expectations that people can't be as productive as they once were. And so those are some of the things. And if I feel like someone is vulnerable to some severe level of emotional distress, really encouraging them to see a therapist and normalizing that by seeing one myself and sharing that with them. So yeah, I think that's important. And the other thing that I'm practicing and encouraging other people to do is to create boundaries between creating space between work and home, which has been particularly challenging for those of us who work in mental health. I have a part-time job as a therapist in private practice, and Navigate NOLA is my full-time job, but everything is just kind of bleeding together. At the beginning of the pandemic, I wasn't saying no to anything. I was just taking all the work that was coming to me. And because this is a time of really high emotional distress, I was working 7 days a week. And I was thinking, well, it's Zoom, so I'm okay. I can do this, and not really like recognizing, no, you're managing other people's emotions. It doesn't matter if it's in person or through a computer screen, it's exhausting. And so I finally forced myself to take time off. And when I recognized the space and capacity that I was creating for myself, I, encouraged our team to do the same thing. So yeah, creating a lot of boundaries, space, time off, all of that stuff. And in my personal life, creating boundaries with people's access to me was a huge thing. So I think in the absence of those things, many people resort to alcohol and drug use. But I think if you put those things in place, it can help you to manage emotional distress a little bit better.
That is too real. Someone literally just told me maybe 2 hours ago, Christina, you haven't taken time for yourself this year. You should do that.
You should do it.
I'm gonna do that.
I did it over Thanksgiving break. I took 2 days off and I felt like a new person. You gotta do it.
Yes, noted, will do. I'm gonna do that. Thank you so much, Danielle. Kasima, I wanna ask you this in response to a survey that shows that 1 in 4 young people ages 18 to 24 have suicidal thoughts or attempted suicide. How does this make you feel, knowing we're in such crazy days with pandemic, with racial injustice nationwide? How does that make you feel when you hear that?
Not good. And moreover, suicide doesn't have a face. Or those are vulnerable to suicide. It's some people, I've taught at a school recently, and you hear people who had issues, and when you look at someone, you wouldn't think like, oh, this person was on a cusp of committing suicide. Or, I have a colleague who I've never met in person, but he had a son who was about 10 who committed suicide. And I mean, he was very close to his family and did all kind of things together. I can't say too much because it just be too specific to tell who he is, but it's like you would have never thought that this person was vulnerable to that. And I think people have touched on it before. It's because a lot of people don't share. They don't share that they're in trouble, and you just never know. So it just makes me feel bad. I know with my friends' practices, even if I'm busy, and I can't really talk on the phone. It's like, you okay? Are you okay? You good? You good? And it's really an honest thing, because sometimes we just rush people off the phone, and you always hear like, oh man, I wish, and had I known, but maybe they did give you a sign, but we were too busy to recognize it. So it doesn't make me feel good, and trying to check in on my friends, and check in on myself, and checking on my loved ones, and just always making sure we're okay. Lastly, I spoke to my nephew yesterday. We're the same age, and he lost his son to gun violence last year. And he made a Facebook post because it was his son's. It would have been his son's 19th birthday, and you could just hear you could read it, but you could hear the hurt in my nephew's voice, and although it's just text. So I called him, and we talked for about an hour, and it felt good, and it felt good for me. It felt good for him. But just checking in on each other, and not to say that my nephew was suicidal. I'm not inferring that, but he was hurt, and hurt can lead you to do things that you wouldn't normally do. So it makes me feel bad, and those are some of the things that I try to do to always show care to those who I love.
I'm still muted, sorry. You'd think I know how to use Zoom by now, 9 months into this, and I still have issues. No, excellent points, Casimo. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I want to ask you that same question, Jennifer, really quickly. How does it make you feel in your thoughts to know that 1 in 4 young people, 18 to 24, they have suicide thoughts or they've attempted suicide?
It makes me feel a lot of things. Sadly, not surprised, but at the same time alarmed. And I think bottom line for me, it's a call to action that we all need to do better, to figure out like what's our place in that to help. And whether it be like finding a way to support frontline workers so that they can do more to be present and support themselves through this time so that they can be present to be a frontline support to young people. Like I think about the compassion fatigue of mental health professionals or educators or my colleagues in the nonprofit industry that are much more present on the front lines of working with young people and making sure that they can continue to be in their jobs and do their jobs so they can be present for young people. But then also more broadly thinking about like, what can we do to give this generation of folks some hope that it's going to be okay? They're going to have a job. They're going to be able to support themselves. And, just those little things, that sense of community that you can build in a million different ways. So even if that's just like taking a moment to be kind to a stranger or, check in on your neighbor, just doing whatever it is that you can do. Every single human has a thing that they can do to contribute to preventing this and being aware of it. And I think, also encouraging young people to keep talking. I had an experience with a person in my family who was having, some suicidal thoughts. And the most important thing to me in that moment was that they said something and they were present and we could figure out a way to respond and let them know that they were heard and that we all knew and we were thinking about them and we cared and we loved them. So making sure like when someone is reaching out to you, like be present and take that moment to say, I hear you, I see you. And it just, again, a million little things we all can do, even if we're not mental health professionals, to figure out how to be responsive and to help.
Jennifer, thank you. Thank you all so much. A reminder that if you have any questions for our panelists, please write them in the chat because We will get to those questions in just a few minutes. I want to go ahead and look at some of the results from our polls that we had throughout this night. If we could pull those results up. So the first poll that we had, does your employer support employees in receiving mental health support if needed? You can see here, 80% of you said yes, your employer does support employees in getting that mental health support if needed. 20% of you said no. The second question we had here said, since the pandemic, have you yourself felt at risk of losing your job because of a mental illness? 63% of you said not at all. 20% of you said from time to time. 11% of you said often, and 6% of you said all the time. So really good data for our organizations here tonight to kind of dive into and look into when we're talking about these services. Here's the second poll, the results for that. The first question we had for our second poll said, have you or someone you know experienced suicidal thoughts during the pandemic? 34% of you responded yes, and 66% of you responded no. Second question here, do you find that your amount of drinking and use of substances, prescriptions, including marijuana, increased and you're kind of having some trouble scaling back? 54% of you said it hasn't increased. 40% of you said increased a bit. 60% of you said increased quite a lot. None of you said it's increased and I can't control it. So, you know, again, something for all of our professionals here to kind of look into when we are looking at these results. Again, any questions that you all would like to ask our panelists, we would greatly appreciate your input, and we would love to see kind of your thoughts, your ideas, your suggestions that you would have for our panelists. Just feel free to write them here alongside this chat. While we wait for that, Rashida, final thoughts when you look at some of these poll results and you see how people here tonight kind of answered them.
Got it. Okay. Well, the question about like, have you or somebody you know experienced suicidal thoughts, and that response being the way that it is, I think that you just don't know. Like, how do you know? Like you could have answered that question no today, and tomorrow somebody you care about could be gone. And I don't wish that on anyone, but I just want to be clear, if you're not actively working at like checking in with people and seeing how they're doing, then you actually just don't know. And so if that was an option, I think that would have been that is how most of us should be answering, is like, we don't know unless you actually do know. Because suicide ideation is just not a stranger to any community. And I work with 18 to 24-year-olds or 16 to 24-year-olds. And I'm going to tell you that my concern for my young people during this crisis has been very high, and we have had issues, significant issues where I've had to call Danielle in the middle of mental health crises for my young people. Besides just bringing her on to provide therapy, yeah. In terms of the drinking, I thought that was interesting. So let me tell you how I thought about that question. I was like, I have been drinking. I did start doing the drizzly thing at the beginning because I was not going out my liquor. I was doing a drive-through daiquiris. I was not playing. I was going to get my liquor to get me through. Now, what I will say is, while I can't say that it is increased, I will, because I think socially, like I go out and I have a, wine, we go to happy hours, and we're not doing that anymore. What I will say is my reasons for drinking have changed. So where I might be going out to like get a cocktail, just hang out with my friends, I'm having glasses of wine because of my damn anxiety. Excuse my language, but because of anxiety, or because I just need, I get scared because sometimes I feel like I need to get this champagne for a minute so I can calm down, right? That's real. I'm not gonna front. I didn't feel like that before. Like I was just drinking socially. I feel like that now sometimes. So I just wanna encourage folks to think about like what is different about how they're checking in with people, connecting with people. What is different about, when you're using substances like that. And then I also wanted to just say in closing, one of the things that I ask that everybody does is to just be more open with your feelings and communicate them more publicly, because we have to normalize the wide range of emotions that we feel as human beings. Like we have to. So that when we do that, we give other people permission to do that. Please don't be that person on social media like, oh my gosh, that person is always like telling their business and they're like using this as their outlet and they shouldn't be doing it. It's like, nah, like listen and look at what people are saying and doing and try to provide support instead of judgment. But us speaking about how we're really feeling and being transparent gives other people permission to do that. I just want to invite us to do that more.
That is too real. Entirely too real. I use Drizzly probably more than I should now. Mommy, you didn't hear that. So thank you so much, Rashida, for just, keeping it real. Thank you to all of you for keeping it real. It is so appreciated. I want to introduce you all now to the Metropolitan Human Services District Executive and Medical Director, Dr. Rochelle Dunham, joining us today just to kind of give another background on exactly what MHSD does. And she's also going to talk about some of the questions in the platform within the community. Hi, Dr. Dunham, how you doing?
Hey, Christina, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much for adding quality to this event. And I just have to say, you all are a phenomenal group of what I can say is young people. I really, really appreciate you all doing this for us because it really does authenticate a lot of what's being said and it makes it very real for people. So I want to say personally, I appreciate you for doing this. It goes in line with what Metropolitan does. We try to stay on the cutting edge of what the issues are, and two major issues are suicide and increased substance use. And those are of tremendous concern to us, but they are both occurring, as you all know and spoke very well to, the results of a climate we're living in that is a collision of so many forces that I think we don't know which way to turn under the circumstances. But you have demonstrated very well how this impacts people, but also how you can fight back under the circumstances, because there is no laying down your guard here and there is no throwing in the towel. We have to keep pushing. As Cosimo said, you got to keep fighting, got to keep moving. We got to keep doing what we do because this too will pass. We will look back and this will be a memory. This will be a blur to us. We will struggle. You, Jennifer, will struggle to tell that baby inside of you what exactly went on during this time, and that child will be healthy. You need to speak it and believe it, okay? But our time is now, and we are all purposed to be here now, and we are all purposed to go through this and come out on the other side so that we can be the people recorded in the history of the COVID pandemic. And we will do that, and we will do that well. So you all said some very, very wonderful things. And I guess one way that a couple of words I would use to summarize what you said was, first of all, you have to give yourself permission, and you demonstrated that, because typically we want to cling to familiar. We want to cling to what we are accustomed to. And Rashida's last comments, I think, speak to the fact that people continue to do in stressful times. We do the things that we customarily do. That's what we do. And that's why people drink more, because if they drink naturally to relax anyway, under the circumstances, you're going to drink more because your anxiety level is higher. Not you, Jennifer, don't even think about it. But for everybody else, if that's what you do, and I caution you, Christina, about your disclosure, we have to just be careful that if they are not things that are healthy, then we can very well wind up on the other side of ill health with those behaviors that ordinarily were not problematic. So just a note of caution to our audience as well. And so, but you got to give yourself permission. I love what Men said about revisiting, rethinking, repurposing. All of those things are so important right now. In fact, this time is a luxury. I consider it a luxury. I consider it a joyous time to be able to do that. It's unfortunate that as human beings, we have to be forced to do that, right? But that is what you do. When you can't do anything else, you figure out how you can be better. And that's a lot of what you all have learned to do. You've learned how to do things better. I like the fact that, Nina, you talked about how close you and your husband are and how you can't even imagine how this time would pull you apart. clearly recognizing that it has done that for some people, but you all realize that this is a time to draw closer to each other, not to pull apart from each other. And if you got enemies that you can't tolerate, you need to pray for them. But don't let them tear you apart. That's what you do for them. And Cosimo, yeah, you got a good woman behind you. You know that, huh? Next to you, in front of you, wherever, which way she needs to go. But you're also a good man, and good women support good men. So it's a testament to you that she feels how she feels. And I do understand the artist and the challenge that artists have. I have 2 artist children or millennials, and it's constant. It's a constant, conversing and helping them to reframe and rethink and twist it around. Danielle, you know what I'm talking about. Using that cognitive ability to make it make sense. It is what you do. I tell people, listen, I am always going to reframe a situation in my head so that it makes me feel good. I'm never going to let the situation make me feel bad. I'm going to find a perspective on it that makes me feel good. And that's what a lot of what you all have been talking about. So all of these things are so very, very important to our survival and to our ability to get through this. But we gotta also pull somebody along with us, reach out to other people. And you've said that as well. You cannot do well by yourself under the circumstances. You gotta bring somebody else with you, because that's the giving part of this, the selflessness of this, that makes this the blessing for us. Because I'm sure all of us have helped people who we otherwise would not have had the opportunity to help if this were not happening. And so I'm a big believer that everything is always purpose for a reason. It's just that we have to figure that out. What is the reason and what is the purpose for this? But I think you all have done a tremendous job. Yeah, Hallmark movies are corny, Christina and Rashida. I've been watching them too. I'm not a Hallmark girl. I'm not a Lifetime girl. That stuff is just too illogical, but it's very wonderful right about now. So I am with you looking at the Christmas. Oh, I saw that one. I need to look at the next one coming on. You know what I mean? Anything that has a happy ending. I love the decorating your house, the different rooms for Halloween. I love the 2, 3, 4, 5 Christmas trees. A woman in our complex, she puts Christmas trees in all of her rooms in her house, and she does this big party and has everybody over. And I said, this is absolutely ridiculous overkill, right? And right about now, I'm saying, you know what? She had the right idea in mind. I need to buy a few more Christmas trees. So giving yourself permission to be different. This is the time to be different. This is the time to take a risk. This is the time to try something new, crazy, unusual, strange. It's okay. If you don't want to be seen as odd and unusual, now's the time to do it. And then when you get the joy from it, you can patent it as your own. So I want you all to really continue to do the work that you're doing. I love what you're doing. You all are partners with Metropolitan, where we change lives, and you too are changing lives as you do the work that you do. And we will be calling on all of you for other opportunities to work with us, and you can call on us for other opportunities for us to work with you. And Christina, you know, you got to do this thing for me, Sarah, whenever we need you to do it. I so love you and appreciate you. Every time I see you on TV, I said, there she goes, doing her thing. And so ladies and gentlemen, I am so grateful, and I just enjoy just sitting back and just listening for a change and not having to be the voice. And so I pray that all of you all and your families do well, and that this holiday season is a blessed one for you. And I know you're going to get through this situation, and we're going to keep working. So thank you so much.
Dr. Dunham, you are the best, may I just add, not just because you're a lovely soror of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, but just simply because you're the best. Thank you so much. Rashida, we have a couple of quick questions we want to get to as we wrap up tonight. We have a question from one of our attendees who is asking what advice you would give to college students who are trying to deal with virtual schooling and lack of campus life and social interaction. If you could just quickly respond to this. I know that you also wrote a response in the chat as well.
I did. Really quickly, first of all, I think, I don't remember who said it on the panel, Danielle did, about releasing this idea that we have to be so productive. Like, that is rooted in capitalism, release that. So, you know, if you don't have your best semester ever this semester, okay. I think that we will all be all right. Employers, future employers, and graduate schools will understand. So release that pressure to be your absolute best. And also, I did share that as young people, as students, you should be compiling a list of practices that your faculty and staff should be implementing to support you during this time. Like, they don't know until you tell them. So if it's, please give us grace on our assignments, make sure to share with us our mental health stuff, like mental health resources on campus, whatever it is, like, you tell them what it is that you need and get them to implement it and do a little advocacy, because I think that often can actually help with your mental health and well-being. And then finally, because the question came from a group of young people who are in student media, do what you do. Tell the story. Tell the story about what it means to be a student during this time, because when you tell that story, you give voice to the many other people who share that experience. So those are my recommendations.
Excellent, Rashida, thank you. And Dr. Dunham, we will close with you for this final question. This is coming from a peer support specialist asking for updated information for individuals who are feeling suicidal, as well as some of the lost parents and children. And the second part of this question here is some post-COVID information to help and serve others when across Southeast Louisiana, across parts of the state like Baton Rouge, as well as surrounding areas.
So with regards to suicidal thoughts, don't sit alone with those thoughts. Those thoughts are like cancer in your head, in your mind, and it is really important to shout it out, let somebody know, because most of the time people really don't want to die. They really just want relief, and there is relief, but we don't know what we don't know, and we can't help what we don't know. To those who are wondering and are seeing changes in people, it's important for you to ask. Don't be afraid to ask the question. The question does not make a person commit suicide. It can save a life, and more often than not, it will save that life. So if you're feeling that way, tell somebody is what I would say. Tell somebody who you trust. Call Metropolitan. We certainly will have our information available to you. I can promise you that we will respond in ways that you would never imagine to help save your life and hopefully to save the lives of other people. We are one of 10 local governing entities for the state of Louisiana. We all provide this type of service. We all have numbers that you can call and professionals who cover services during working hours, but also available 24/7 through our call lines. Our line is 504-568-3130. We really want you to give us a call. If you're internet savvy, look up mhsdla.org. We're there. Everything we do is there. But most of all, please let us know what you need, and we'll be there for you.
Excellent. Thank you so very much. Thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you, Dr. Dunham. Thank you to all of the partners tonight who have been part of this amazing conversation that could go on for hours, because there is so much to talk about. There's so much to get to, and we have all struggled. We are all struggling, but better days are ahead. And I truly do believe that. And I think that the main message here that hopefully we all can take away is, do not hesitate to talk to somebody. Do not hesitate to call somebody. And again, that number, if you or somebody you know needs mental health support, you can always call 504-568-3130. That's Metropolitan's phone number. You can also, like Dr. Dunham said, if you're tech savvy, internet savvy, you can go online to mhsdla.org. And a lot of these services are free. Use them. Use them, use them, use them. If you don't need them, make sure somebody else uses them. Pass it along so that we all can help each other just be better and support one another. Support these restaurants safely while you can. Support organizations while you can. Do whatever we can to just uplift one another, because that is more than anything what we need during this time. So on behalf of Metropolitan Services Human District and on behalf of the partners tonight, Thank you all so very much for your time. On behalf of our panelists, thank you, thank you, thank you for the work that you all are doing in the community, for your continued efforts. I pray for better days, and I pray for all of you. Thank you so much. You guys have a wonderful night.
Bye-bye.